Good evening.
We're open for business.
Everybody. February 13th, 2019. I will start by reading our vision statement. The Ashland Public Schools will be a model district that embraces the academic and social-emotional growth of all students through a supportive, collaborative, and challenging experience. Our students will develop into lifelong learners who will contribute positively to society. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV. Our order of business this evening is the call to order, opening procedures, agenda review and adoption, recognitions and student presentations. The Student Advisory Committee is here. A moment for public comment and items of interest to the public, including Ashland High School update, approval of Student Activities Club and Student Activity Account, the AHS math team, the FY19 budget update, the FYF 220 budget update, Superintendent's mid-cycle evaluation process, administrative items, including the superintendent's report. I don't see an assistant superintendent this evening.
Nope.
Warrant approvals, policy updates, consent actions including approval of minutes, the minutes of January 23rd, 2019, acceptance of gifts and donations. Did we
have some.
locate
Yep,
those?
I found them.
Okay.
Yep.
Committee reports of activities, member updates, action items, and then we will adjourn. Everybody good with the order of business this evening?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. Okay. So moving forward with our student presentations, we will welcome the Student Advisory Committee. Good evening, ladies.
Hello. How are you?
Fabulous. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Since we saw you, we had winter break. Yay. And then we had midterms, which was actually really well, at least for me. I thought they were pretty good this year. Stuco put sticky notes on everyone's locker that have positive messages, and some of them are really funny too. So they're still up. People really enjoy those. You find them stuck to other things, but they're cute. I like them. Stuco also had Clocker Idol, and the winner of that was Maeve McMahon. She's a freshman. So yeah, she was really good this year. So she'll probably perform next year. They usually have like the winners of past seasons come back. NHS, right after midterms, had a bowling fundraiser. So the Saturday after, we went to Bolero and Shrewsbury. And we had about 20 lanes for 2 hours. Well, it was 10 and 10. So for 2 hours, and we had about 160 people come. It was really successful, and everybody really liked it. It was our first year doing it, and they even expressed that they wanted us to do it again this year, which won't be possible because it was a lot of work to put together, but it will definitely probably become an annual thing. NHS is also planning an Out of the Darkness walk, and we started really advocating for it 3 days ago, posting it on Facebook, and we've already raised over $3,000 to reach our goal of $10,000, and it's free to sign up. So we're posting the link everywhere, so if you guys want to sign up, maybe come out and support. It's on Saturday, April 27th. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah.
So this past weekend or 2 weekends ago, Make-A-Wish had their Jump for Joy event where they invited a whole bunch of little kids to come and bounce on bouncy houses, and it's really fun. They made a lot of money out of that. Spring sports have started, at least the ones who aren't crazy like lacrosse, who started before winter sports started, but captain's practices have gotten going. We had the Student of the Term breakfast, which recognized all the students who were nominated to be the Student of the Term. They hold a breakfast for them to recognize them. And last Friday, the whole school wore orange to support Jake Silver. It was great to see everybody's support. Jake actually came in, and I got to say hi to him. It was good to see him. And also on that subject, hockey senior night was this past Saturday, and they dedicated that to Jake as well. So it was really nice to see that.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Hi there.
Hi. So everyone's super happy with the early release yesterday. Yeah, thanks for that.
Best day ever, right?
Yeah, it was great.
That's all you get this year.
Right.
So the Butter Braid fundraiser, as I heard, was a great success. A lot of people bought, and the pickups were today. At the end of the day, the NHS talent show auditions were today. I heard that there were a lot of people who did audition, and that it's going to be great when they do it. And last thing is the student body's really looking forward to break. They really
more
want the break.
days. You're so close.
2 more.
Yeah, 2 more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for the updates.
Yeah. Okay, here's our moment for public comment. If anybody has anything they'd like to offer. Seeing none, or did you, Claudia? Yes? If you have something you'd like to share, would you mind coming up to the podium? Because then you get to be on TV, and everyone gets to
can
see
hear
your
you.
face and hear you.
Okay,
So thank you.
I think
Appreciate
most
that.
of you know me. I'm Claudia Bialzik. It's my understanding that you might be talking about something later that might pertain to me personally. So this is a little preemptive for me to speak now. But if there's no opportunity for public comment, I just want to say if I could ask maybe to speak later after.
So, to your point, it'll be
Yeah.
next meeting that we have.
Next meeting?
Yes. Yep.
You're sure?
100%.
But you can,
you're welcome
you can
to.
make your comment now, you're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So we'll take it, and if you have something that you want to add later, we have public comment at every one of our meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there's more that you need to say, you can come back, but if you want to express something, since you're here, we'll hear it. This is your time to do that.
Okay. I'll wait and hear. I'll listen first.
Okay,
But thank you.
sure. Moving along, the Ashland High School update.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
So, Ashland High School, we have started our course recommendation process just a couple weeks ago. Students are done putting in their recommendations tomorrow. So I wanted to just share with you a couple of things that we're talking about, or that we are doing or in the process of talking about and changing for our schedule for next year. We spent a lot of time looking at equity across our schedule and making sure that all of our students are getting equal access to instruction and what they need. So one of the things that we planned at the beginning of the school year and met with the science department is currently the way our schedule works is a large number of our science classes have an extra period attached to each class, so they might meet 6 times a period rather than 5. And so at the beginning of the year, let the science department know that I want them to relook at their curriculum, and that we're going to go down to 5 periods for each science class next year. The only exception to that is going to be the AP classes. They currently meet 7 times out of a cycle, and that would be a big adjustment. We basically have looked at it as it's 30 to 60 extra hours of instruction or time in the science classroom with the science teachers per class. So asking them to cut 60 hours out for an AP class, we're going to look at just doing, they'll have 1 extra block next year. And then all of the CP and honors classes will just meet the 5 times a period like every other subject area does. We did a lot of work at looking what other districts do and how much time they have, and felt that we had a lot more time dedicated to science instruction than other districts do, who are just accessible with, as we are in delivering instruction. On top of that, we're also in the process of looking at incorporating an X block into next year's schedule, and looking at it from 2 different lenses. One is making sure that we are meeting the needs of all students and getting extra support. I think that our Tier 2 and Tier 3 kids aren't getting the support they need. We don't have a structure within our school day currently, so that time would add time for teachers to be providing extra help. We could provide groups to students that might need it through counseling. There's a variety of different avenues we could go down. And as part of our NEASC accreditation, we're also looking at ways to make sure that every student in the building has an adult that they can make a connection with. And we're hoping the X block time will give us that structure to make sure that happens. We've gone and visited several different schools that are doing this type of structure already. And basically it looks at taking a chunk of time in the middle of the school day and making it non-instructional and dedicating it to a variety of different things. The model we are leaning towards is a kind of a 30-minute block where students would stay with whatever class they're in at the time, but teachers could make appointments and mandate they have to come see them to get some extra help. If it's a student that's struggling, you know, they happen to be in English, but their math teacher can mandate you have to come see me. And then also building in, you know, we have a peer tutoring center that is up and running through our peer leaders this year, but you know, a student that needs tutoring has to be available when the tutor is available. So we would make that be a time that kids could sign up for tutoring. And we also, Sharon High School, we looked at them, they actually have sign-outs for places like the gym. And, you know, so that student that does need a 30-minute movement break or some sort of movement break, they would sign out and go to the gym. So we just doing some time working on that this evening. I'm going to present it to the faculty tomorrow. But certainly the students that have been a part of our site council and the parents and most of the teachers do see a lot of benefits to adding that in.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
Is there going to be some sort of accountability built into it so that, you know, we know where the kids are going to be and they're either going to be in that class that they were in or they're going to be with another teacher or wherever?
Definitely, at least to start. You know, the different programs we've looked at, like there's a school that has kind of a rather expensive by student sign-out process. And then there's schools that are saying they're very easily using Google Forms or Sign Up Genius. So we would look to model one of those programs, but it's going to be that unless you have been assigned to go somewhere else, you stay with the class that you're currently in.
And so does that allow for additional instruction in that class, or is that a sort of a, I don't want to call it a free period, I'm sure it's not that, but.
Yeah. The hope, and again, we're going to spend some time as a faculty working on what we think it should look like tomorrow at our faculty meeting. My expectation is that it would not be additional instructional time. It might be time that, you know, instruction has happened for that 68 minutes and students have an assignment or group project that they're going to end. You know, students struggle with finding the time outside of school to get together to do those group projects. So, okay, here's some time that you could work on that group project, but we understand, Johnny, you have an appointment down at counseling, and Susie, you need to go see your English teacher to get some, you know, essay help, that type of thing. So it's not going to be direct instruction, but it could be time. We went to see Sharon High School. I remember I was in an AP class where they had an essay due, and you know, half the kids were sitting working on the essay, and the teacher was checking in with them but other kids were doing different homework assignments or had left to go other places. So it's going to have some flexibility.
And so we'd be cutting sort of 5 minutes from each of the other instructional periods to make that work?
4 to 5 minutes.
Another question on that. When you say non-instructional period, do you count labs as instructional? Because those science classes who are losing those lab periods, they could theoretically say, oh, go off, here's a lab packet, do this. Would that be instructional or not? Because that might be
it's hard to answer that without knowing exactly how you do those lab packets. Do you do them in class or independently now? Or does it vary?
We do them in class, but on our own in lab groups.
Right. So it could potentially be that. I think it would depend on what we end up deciding the structure needs to look like. It's very new right now. You know, one of the things we talked about with the science teachers was, you know, that setup and breakdown time, and maybe some of that breakdown could bleed into that extra half an hour. I don't know how much of the direct work that you might do would happen in that time, but there's a possibility it could.
And would studies be affected by this period?
They would not at this point. There are some of the schools that do this have taken away study halls. The way our schedule is structured right now, that wouldn't work for us. You know, I could see doing some peer leader activities during that time, class meetings, things that we're currently taking students out of classes for. You know, extending the 10-minute break would happen during that time. Whole variety of different activities. All right, we're getting ready for the next generation MCAS, which has been a big process. We are hoping the state has given us the chance to do it in 2 sessions or do it in 1 session and get the whole class at one time. We are hoping to make that work. At this point, we have enough Chromebooks and labs to test the entire sophomore class in one chunk, but to just do it in the 2-day session means we're losing access to all that technology for up to 10 days possibly. So, that's a big impact on the classes that are using the Chromebooks and the lab. So we're hoping we're able to do every sophomore in the 2-day period. The deans have been doing a lot of work on that. We're doing some work on the Vision of the Graduate again for our NEAS prep, waiting to see the finalized blueprint, and we will follow along with that. But we do have a group that was working tonight on what do we want to, who do we want to pull together for a group to look at that? Who do we want to survey? What do we want some surveys to look like? So that'll be coming out soon. And in terms of some of our community relationships, we still have our ongoing relationship with the ABA. We are in the process, led by our student council, of planning a reality fair for our seniors as one of their last activities that we are going to pair with what we've been doing as our community service day. They're also going to rotate through a reality fair, which is almost like playing the game of life. And so we just met to do some publicity pictures earlier today, and they're up to they're working with the Rotary Club in Framingham, who helps schools do these fairs, but also the member of the Rotary Club is also a member of the ABA. So they're up to 15 business people that have volunteered at this point to be a part of it. The students will get assigned a credit score and a job, and they will spin the wheel of fortune/misfortune and move around, learning how to buy a car and pay rent and all those kind of things.
Awesome.
So we're looking forward to that. It's really come together. And helps meet our financial literacy goals as well. And then in terms of some of the things that we're doing with our staff in building capacity for educators in our professional practices. We have a lot of teachers that are doing peer observation as their goal today. We're really trying to get people to go out and see other colleagues in different subject areas especially. And we have kind of redesigned our department leader meetings to invite all staff to be a part of, and there's been some really good discussions on things like X-Block at those meetings where we're bringing people from every department that are interested in the topic. That's where we're at.
Excellent.
Any other
Are you
questions?
talking about observing within the building?
Yeah.
Teachers?
Yeah.
Nice.
Although we have had in the past people go and visit other buildings as well, so we're always open to that.
Any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kelly, do you,
Exciting updates.
the next piece is the high school too, if you just wanna.
It's the math team
Oh, yeah.
field trip or the
No.
activity account.
Yeah.
So you want to just tell us something about what that is?
Sure. Math team is a group of students who approach one of their math teachers. They're basically focused on competition, and I feel like maybe they've had 3 competitions already regionally. They're doing very well, I'm told, from where they're at. So they meet weekly with their math teacher and learn new math skills and practice math. Topics I don't understand. And then they go out as a team and compete. They told me, they explained the whole, how they're leveled and everything. I just said, go get them. Good job.
Excellent. So this is
But
a
they
request to open an account for
Well,
their
to
fundraising
s-
activities. And
Yes.
so
Correct,
forth,
to
yeah.
set up
Yeah.
the club as
Okay.
well as set up
Yeah.
the activity account.
Yeah,
All
they
right.
haven't done a lot of fundraising. There is a nominal entrance fee for, I think the Principal's General Fund paid the registration fee for them to join this round of competition.
All right. Do we have a motion for that?
Well, so, Jim, should
Or
this
questions?
motion also include authorizing the principal to manage it?
Yeah, we can, because we did that for the other ones at the beginning of the year, yeah.
Okay.
That's fine, yep.
Do you want to do the
But
motion?
first,
Mr.
set up the club first,
Yeah.
motion. yeah.
Move
Alright.
to approve the creation of the Ashland High School math team club.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Paul, do you want to take the second one? please?
I think it's just move to approve the creation of the student activity count for the Ashland High School Math Team Club for the 2018-2019 school year, and authorize the principal to manage the
Expenditure
deposits and
funds.
expenditures from the account.
Oh,
I'll second it for discussion, but before the vote, I guess my only question is, here it says we're creating the account for the 18-19 school year. Do we usually limit accounts to just 1 year? Or should it really be just create?
We come back.
We do?
Yeah,
Okay.
we do it every year, so.
All right, thank you. So my second stance.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Kelly.
So the FY19 budget update. Ms. Durand.
Thank you. Hello. So I ran a fiscal year 2019 year-to-date general fund report as of January 29th, which has been presented in all of your packets. We have been on a spending freeze for a number of months now. Basically, what caused it is every year we have new hires, staff leaves, we hire the new people to come into those positions. We can run anywhere from $0 to $300,000 in savings from all of those exchanges. This year we were very close to even. We had no extra savings in any of our new hires this year. So that's usually money that we have available this time of year to spend. We also looked at the preschool budget. This year's budget was projected on fully being enrolled at 110 students. It is not. It's closer to 85 students. So there's a deficit there. So we moved half of the director's salary into the general fund, which I believe it should have been there all along anyway. But that kind of relieves some of the deficit from the preschool revolving fund. Athletic revolving got hit with some transportation charges from a year ago that nobody knew about. So we're trying to help that revolving account so that Stephen doesn't end up his first year in the negative through no fault of his own. It was a prior year. And the net metering credits we have for the solar agreements we have with 4 or 5, I think it's 5 companies now in town. This is the first year we finally got all of them set up, and what happened is some of them had huge buckets of credits that they had been building up. So they gave us those credits, which are now sitting on our electric bills, and we had to pay them back 90% of that. So we put out all 90% as soon as those credits hit our bills, but we're slowly using up the credits. We haven't used them all up yet, so within the end of this year, and I think even partially into next year, we're gonna be seeing those credits play out on our bills, but they're not playing out right now. So that's basically what caused the freeze. We do have the utilities. We're also waiting to see, usually about March or April, we tend to do an analysis, see where they're running for the year. This has been a pretty cold year, so we're not sure we're going to have too many savings in the utility accounts this year. The pupil transportation contracts are right on target. I did make notes for you on the report. It looks like they have a large balance, but there's offsets in the report that negate everything out. So those are running right on target. Sped out of district tuitions, I think it's about $63,000 in the negative right now, which is not a bad place to be this time of year. And the sped other purchase services is overspent by $129,000. We have a number of leaves this year that we could not hire long-term subs for. They're tough positions. They're psychologists, they're speech-language pathologists. It's tough to fill those positions, so we have to go out and contract service for a lot of those, which ends up costing us more money than bringing someone in. So we think we do have a solution, though, for funding for the remainder of the year. As Mr. Adams gets into next year's budget, we had a plan in place that the revolving fund for the kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, has about $470,000 in it. Our plan was over the next 3 years to gradually use that money and bring those salaries into the general fund. We believe now we can do it all next year. I think that's the right thing to do. So that means the $470,000 that's in the kindergarten full-day revolving account needs to be used on kindergarten expenses. What we're proposing is to move the kindergarten teacher and ESP salaries that we're paying for out of the general fund right now and use the money in the revolving fund this year. That will free up general fund money so we can release the freeze tomorrow. I have a bunch of principals who are probably listening right now because they've been saying, can I buy, and I keep saying, wait till Thursday. So that's our plan. That's where we are for the year. It's a much better place now than I think we were a month ago. So any questions?
Barbara, can you, just when you talk about a spending freeze, what kind of expenses are we not incurring because we have the freeze in place?
It's generally expenses. I mean, salaries are pretty consistent. But like, one of the schools came to me probably 2 months ago and said, we're almost out of copy paper. I want to order, 3 pallets of paper. And I said, no, you can order 1 right now and come back to me later and I'll see if I can find some more money. It's those kind of expenses. We have art teachers now coming to us saying, I'm starting a new project after the February break. Can I order these supplies? So it's mostly the instructional supplies. Anything that's safety or critical, we've been funding out of some of the school choice money. So it would be nice to get those expenses back into the general fund.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Barbara.
Barbara.
And then FY '20 budget update, that's you, Jim?
Sure. I might have to phone in, maybe easier to have a slideshow. So what I'm doing tonight is, as you know, the 27th at our next meeting, we'll be having our budget hearing for the FY 2019-20 budget. So I'm not presenting the actual budget to you tonight. I'm just presenting an update based on after the governor's first proposal, his budget that he filed the fourth Wednesday of January, which I forget the date it was, probably the 26th, 27th, somewhere in there, because it's going to have a significant impact on our budget approach this year, and it relates to what Ms. Durand was just talking about with regard to the kindergarten revolving account a little bit, and from there. So what I want to talk about is when we had our budget workshop in December, on December 15th, when we were looking at a level service budget, we were looking at close to just over a $700,000 deficit at that point in time with regard to the revenues we were expecting from the town, the state, the anticipated 3.75% increase that we've agreed to as part of a 5-year plan with the town and budget forecast, but also knowing that we have significant increases in our out-of-district costs for students next year, as well as transportation, about $150,000 just for out-of-district transportation costs. So part of the process was to just wait until the governor's budget was filed, and then to see where we stood after that. So what I wanted to give you is just a brief update with regard to specifically Chapter 70. That's the aid for those who are listening at home. It's the aid that we get from the state to the town for educational purposes. And if you followed Ashland over the past 20 years, you'll know that Senator Spilka, when she was a school committee member as well, was fighting hard because the foundation formula, the formula that was created to theoretically create some equity across the Commonwealth for educational aid, was really imbalanced to the town of Ashland, with surrounding towns getting significantly more money than Ashland. And as we dug deeply into this about 4 or 5 years ago, even a little more, the way things work in terms of the equity or the value of the homes in the community, but also the wealth in terms of what the Ashland residents file with their tax returns, and was having a negative impact as well in terms of a factor to determine, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but I'm going to right now, in terms of how they determine what our percentage, the contribution of the town is, but also what the state then sends back to the community. So the governor, this year in his budget, made some adjustments to what they call the foundation formula. And the state had received a recommendation a number of years ago from the Foundation Budget Review Commission saying, listen, this formula is flawed. It's flawed for the entire state. We need to make some adjustments to it. There haven't been adjustments in 20 plus years. Therefore, we need to make some adjustments. The governor has a 7-year plan, if you will, to make the necessary adjustments to the foundation budget in order to hopefully get closer to being fully funded in terms of for each community. So some of the things he did this year was look at providing additional per pupil funding for students identified as economically disadvantaged or English language learners. And, so small incremental adjustments to those two numbers. Looking at the rate for out-of-district sped costs towards a goal of 3 times the statewide per pupil average. So increasing this rate to $29,500. We're out-of-district costs is 4 times the foundation rate right now. Increase the allotment for employee benefits, health insurance, closer to the goal of matching what the GIC, the Group Insurance Commission, pays for state employees. So overall, this increases health benefit rates by roughly 4.9 to 9.2% in FY20. And again, that's weed stuff, but what I'm really trying to get at is the governor has made a proposal that is going to have a significant impact on Ashland in the positive with some incremental changes. The caution, and this is my last slide, the caution is that there are a couple bills currently in the legislature pushing for more to be added on to the governor's initial budget. And I'll refer to that in a moment.
Jim, if I can,
Sure.
Just because of the way you were talking about the health insurance,
yeah,
it's important just to be clear, this is not an increase in rates for
correct
employees. This is
right.
an increase in the Chapter 78 based on that factor.
Correct. It's a factor that they add into, so teachers' retirements and how insurance, they know, health insurance itself has grown, exponentially for communities. But it was not, the factor was so small initially in the foundation budget that it wasn't taken into account. And they're starting to add some funds, meaning a factor to help determine that new formula and the new foundation for a community. The difficulty is when we have to talk about the foundation budget, but that's not the dollars we're getting, right? It's determining what your community can afford and determining the wealth of your community is what that foundation formula does. So why is our number going up so much? And I think this is really the meat of it, right? This is why we're having this conversation. Our Chapter 70 funding is going up about $1.7 million compared to FY19. So the Chapter 70 aid coming into Ashland is about $1.67 million more in FY20, that's the initial projection, than FY19. So why is that occurring? That's really what we need to know. And I'll be very honest, when I got the numbers, the first thing I did was text Barbara and say, this is wrong. This can't be right. What the heck is going on? This right? And then I reached out to Tracy Novick from MASC, and I reached out to a lot of people saying, hold on. So as we're finalizing our budget process with the town, we need to know, is this number accurate? And is there a chance that number could change negatively or positively? And again, I'll get to that. It's called foreshadowing. So there are adjustments to the state foundation budget formula, which I just mentioned. But really, if you think about Ashland, this is what you have to think about. It's resetting or recalibrating what our new Chapter 70 aid looks like moving forward because of the following reasons. One, the number of students included in the Chapter 70 funding formula increased by 183 students from FY19 to FY20. What's important to understand is, of that, 124 of those students are a result of moving to a tuition-free full-day kindergarten. We got 0 Chapter 70 aid for those students in FY19. Now we're getting full aid for those students in kindergarten. Significant, to a tune of about $400,000 when you break out the per pupil expense. So that leads into what Ms. Durand is talking about. When we know we're getting the $400,000 as part of the Chapter 70 aid for kindergarten, we feel comfortable asking to move the revolving from this year that we were planned for the next 3 years into FY19 to free up the general operating revenue or operating budget. So 2, our economically disadvantaged students. So there was a factor that, the governor put in the foundation formula saying, hey, your communities that have a lot of economically disadvantaged students, we need to be thoughtful of that and provide more funding for those students as well. That number increased by 30 for us, which is significant. And our English language learner students increased by 23. Again, the governor, that's one of his things, he moved more money into the English language learner students. What I want to identify is we had 133 students who qualified for Chapter 70 aid for ELL students. And that's October 1 data. As of today, this is wrong because I made this yesterday. We had 38 students after October 1 who have enrolled in our community who are identified as English language learners. As of today, it's actually 173 students who are identified. So we've actually had 2 more students in the last 2 days that have enrolled.
So that's 173 out of the total district enrollment?
Correct.
And
Right. So
And
we're,
that number is more than doubled over the last few
it was
years,
less than
'cause it was-
50 students.
I remember that.
When 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or even
So-
5 years ago,
right.
it was under 100.
Right,
We were
so
just kind
we-
of, yeah.
So we are asking.
So they're not calculated into the,
So those 38 kids,
Yeah.
Mrs. Bates, no, are not,
Right.
because the numbers are as of October 1.
Remember, it's always in arrears
Yeah.
from.
Right.
from
so
previous
look, I
October.
counted the
Right.
next
So we
year.
have 33 more, right? So, but you got to remember, there's a lot of movement in and out as
True.
well.
Yeah.
Right.
So that number at the end of
It
the year
could
might be,
fluctuate again.
instead of 38 or 40 now, it might be 30. Just by the nature of a transient population. Interestingly enough today, because this question may come up next week or next time we have the budget conversation, but I looked at the 173 students, and 85% of our 173 students who are qualified as ELL, 85% are Spanish Portuguese speaking. That's our population, with the Portuguese being it was 13. It was 72% increase, or the total for the students. Just found it interesting. I was looking at it. And our third, can you guess it? Anyone? Russian. Yeah. We have 10 students who qualify. Under ELL for Russian speaking.
Before you leave this
Yeah.
slide, you talked about the overall increase in the governor's budget of being 1.67 from one year to the next. What have we seen historically from sort of year-to-year increases, just for context?
So for context, this is about a 26% increase. We've been getting about a 1%. So on average, we've seen about between $50,000 and $75,000 to $80,000 a year increase in Chapter 70 funding from 1 year to the next. So just think last year, I think it was 85,000, and we're going from 85,000 to 1.67 million in a single year.
And some of that's driven by increased enrollment, and some of it's just increased dollar
It's
figures.
it's increased dollars available by the governor that he's put into the aid. It's increased enrollment. It's how each section is calculated. For
There's a
instance,
couple
high
tweaks to the
school.
formula.
Yeah, and I'm gonna,
Right.
the next slide I have
Yeah.
shows a little bit of that, right? So if I go to this, you can see how does the Chapter 70 breakdown increase per grade level and per pupil. So if we look at our preliminary aid is 7.79 million. Last year it was almost 6.1 million. So there's that delta of 1.693. So per pupil costs is 2362 in FY19, but 2819 in FY20. If you just look at the grade levels, look at kindergarten. Well, there's $399,000 per. So the number of pupils that are subject to Chapter 70 aid obviously increased dramatically, and it's all of them versus half of them. in prior years because of the way the formula was. We didn't have tuition free, so you only received half a kid, right, for the foundation aid, or the formula aid. And we also have 230 kids in kindergarten. When we had this conversation 3 years ago, when we talked about moving to tuition-free kindergarten in 2017, when we made that agreement, and Roger Hatch from the Department of Ed, we called and said, hey, what do you anticipate we'll be getting from a, Chapter 70 bump, if you will? And it was $186,000 or $137,000, right? But it was on 185 kids, where we've far exceeded the total number of kids as well, plus 2 years worth of incremental changes to the formula. It costs more money, theoretically, to educate high school students and high school ELL kids. So more money was placed into our ELL population at the high school has grown. So there's a bump there. The governor's made a really strong point to say ELL kids at the high school level need to get more money because we have them for a shorter period of time and it needs to be more intense, whereas at the elementary levels, you've got a longer period of time to get them to a certain point. So, I just, because I like doing this kind of stuff, I broke it down just based on grade level. And you'll notice that, the largest increases certainly were kindergarten, grades 1 through 5. But what you'll notice in grades 1 through 5 is we have 106 ELL students of the 173 in grades 1 through 5. Therefore, that factor is playing into this as well. So we get more money because of that. And then 9 through 12, we had 50 kids this year. High school is 50 kids larger than it was last year. Now, what I don't anticipate is that significant jump next year, because the graduating class, Nicole's graduating class, moving out at 185 kids, that if you remember, the 8th grade class is at 185 kids. There's only 2 classes left after this year's graduating class. It's the 3rd graders going into 4th at 188 kids, and then the 8th graders going to the high school. So after that, we're going to see on average, so the middle school next year is going to have 230, probably about 680 students. And for some reason, the middle school, I think, gets the lowest amount of the Chapter 70 aid, which is interesting. So that's how we get to the 1693 per grade level.
Jim, just
Yeah.
on the ELL point,
Yeah.
is the need for ELL support and services, does it typically dissipate as students get older?
That's the theory behind it.
Yeah.
Is that they should be, as they're testing, and again, what you have to remember is even though we've invested heavily in our ELL educators, we need more. We're still not able to meet the amount of time on learning that these students who are coming in. We have more students who are non-English speakers, not partial English speakers, but non-English speakers. So we need to spend, it's 5 days a week at 48 minutes per kid a day.
Right, and it depends on
One-on-one
where they're
instruction.
at when they move into the
Right.
system, right?
Correct.
Like, it doesn't work
Yeah,
kind
it
of like.
was more this
That's the-
assumption that, yes, you're
Yeah.
gonna
That's
always
the
have
assumption,
move-ins,
correct.
Right.
But as kids are getting services, if they're
Yep.
they're moving from Halston to Ashland,
Right.
presumably they're getting services in both. If they're moving from South America to here and
Correct.
speak Spanish
Right.
only at home, and they move here in 10th grade, obviously the need
Yeah.
for services. Just, it was a generalized question
Yeah.
in terms of how it translated to these
Yeah.
numbers.
Well,
that's all.
and I think it's important for anybody that is listening to understand what the services we're providing. We're not providing translative service
Right.
for them.
We're
We're teaching them English.
Right.
And so the whole point is, as they become proficient, they no longer need that.
Right.
And so,
And again, part of the law too is you have to remember we're obligated by law to follow so a student tests out of being a they used to call it former English language proficient student, right? They weren't proficient. We're required to follow those students for 2 years and to monitor those students to ensure that when they're in those general classrooms, now they're no longer getting direct service from the English language learner teacher, so they're in math class, and they're not performing well. Is it a language barrier still? Just because they passed the test to move out of being an English language learner student, that doesn't mean their language skills have been acquired enough to perform as well. And so we have to monitor that. And that's why the state teacher licensure, everyone has to have sheltered emergent SEI training, and that's part of our licensure now, is that we have to be able to teach to students who are not English, native English speakers in every one of our classes, and have to have the skills to do that. So the last slide is, so what does this really mean? After, having a conversation about Chapter 70 increasing by $1.69 million. So what does it mean? So Barbara and I had a conversation with the town manager and the finance director, Brittany Capone, to say, okay, what does this mean when the governor's budget came out? What does that look like now? Because obviously the general government aid increased as well. There were some other offsets, charter school expenses, Keefe Tech expenses, things of that nature that we typically adjust in the fall, right? At the fall town meeting, we typically have an adjustment after we've set the budget. We set our budget in May. The state budget won't be passed till July. I mean, last year was like the second or third week of July. It was even later. So working with them, trying to figure out how much are we going to realize of that, of all the changes that were being made to the projection. So we sat with them, it was probably a week ago, and just worked through some numbers. And in the end, in order for me to present tomorrow my executive summary of what I'm proposing to you for the budget, which you will then have a conversation on next meeting, and so we can publish documents so the community can review it. It ended up being sort of 1.2 total. So we looked at the $400,000 initially from the increase in tuition or increase in kindergarten, and we said, hey, we made this agreement a long time ago that money has to come back into the operating. In addition to our increased out-of-district costs for transportation of about $150,000. And then we work through our policy, if you will, that we have with the town and the finance committee to split the remaining 70-30. So what that means is we're in a good spot. So the budget I'll present tomorrow to the community and to you will alleviate that level service deficit that we were having, but also has an opportunity built in to add some positions and to move our district forward. Again, I'm just foreshadowing. I haven't published it yet, so and you haven't seen the information fully either. So that'll be out tomorrow. So there are no projected cuts. It's anticipated we'll be able to add necessary programming and personnel to continue moving our district forward. I still think it's very wise to take a cautious approach to the entire budgeting process. That's why I reached out to MASC. That's why I went 5 years in arrears to determine whether or not the governor's budget, what impact it had in the final budget. Not 1 year in the 5 years did our Chapter 70 aid go down. In fact, 4 of the 5 years, it actually increased.
Over the governor's proposal.
Over the governor's budget. So as it matriculated through the House and the final vote, that number actually increased. There was 1 year it stayed flat. That was it. I think it was 2014-15. I think it stayed exactly where it was. That was it. And so I comment, there are other legislative bills being presented, which in reading those bills and having conversations at the superintendent's level, but also with folks from the MASC, any adjustments look like they're going to continue to add on to the governor's budget in terms of the foundation formula. So increasing it versus reducing.
Right, that's the advocacy
Yeah.
around it. I mean, I've reached
Correct.
out to MASC as
Yeah.
well, and they're still working at making sure that it's, addresses issues across the Commonwealth.
Correct.
So we're in a good place, but there's still work to do.
So that's really the update on the FY20 budget process. It's not, like I said, our next meeting is designed as a budget hearing, which you will then, tomorrow, we will have the documents and we'll present them to you, but also to the community, so they can review everything and come here for that meeting. We hope people show up. We want feedback. And, that's where we'll see positions added, but potential deletions, changes in certain line items from December 15th to today.
Right, and this is our one and only budget hearing.
Right.
So we encourage folks to take a good look at the budget that comes out tomorrow. You're pretty sure that's...
Well, in my message,
Yeah.
I've been pretty adamant that I need to get it out tomorrow. So folks have, it's vacation week next week, but they've got a couple weeks to actually be able to look at all the line item details if they want. Mrs. Durand will have that posted on the budget website in the Ashland Public Schools home site. Go to budget. Actually, it's just one specific line. I think it's just budget, and all that information will be there probably tomorrow afternoon. I'm still cleaning up some of the language in my executive summary, but my intention is to have that published tomorrow, but also sent out to the community, and I will have Mr. Herbert also send it out through his listserv, which he typically does for me. So it hits not just the school-based population, but the rest of the citizens in town.
So, and we will have that hearing at our next meeting, so
Correct.
we do encourage
Yeah.
folks to give their input, because that's how we get to our final
Right.
spot.
And again, as I want to stress to anyone who's listening, this is my recommendation. The board has not voted on anything, and ultimately it becomes the board's budget. But we've worked through as an admin team, and this is where what I'm presenting to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And just sort of clear out, Jim,
Yeah.
the budget you're gonna recommend is going to be based on the governor's
Correct.
proposal, right?
That is correct. And that was the conversation that we had with town management, was do we feel comfortable moving forward with the governor's proposal? I didn't feel comfortable going any greater than what the governor is proposing within his budget, right?
Right, that makes sense.
But what we wanted to make sure was, when we had that conversation, because of the way the policy is written, we still have a potential opportunity in the fall to, receive more operating revenue, if you will, if the numbers come in greater than what the governor is proposing.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Okay.
Great,
Thanks,
thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you. Thanks, Claudia. All right, next up, the superintendent's mid-cycle evaluation process.
Yes, so, let me just shut that off. I'll come back over here. So, at our next meeting as well, as you know, as part of the evaluation process, midway through the year, I ask you to look at the this year it's four, the goals that I've set. And what I will do is end up providing you with the goals that we set, with areas of evidence through next week. Typically, I try to get it together during the February break, send it to you and say, these are areas that we feel like we're making significant progress, areas that I think we've met, areas that we are, I'm concerned about us not necessarily getting to or meeting fully. So it really is your opportunity to come in. This isn't the written report that Ms. Tosti pulls together typically at the end of the year, but it's really an opportunity for me to share with you the goals, what we've done thus far, and allow you to have feedback and give me feedback to say, hey, Mr. Adams, we want you to focus on X for the remaining 4 months of the year. Do you think you're going to get to, one of the goals? Are you going to meet all of the communication goals that you set in terms of the Zoom sessions, in terms of, the communication of the budget and those things? So that's really the process, and I just wanted to bring it up to put it on your plate and remind you that that's going to be have to be on at the next meeting. It's not an evaluative, it's more of a check-in and say, hey, you know, where are we?
Right, and just to clarify for the community, if there are folks out there that haven't followed us as we've gone through this process before, some years ago we adopted the superintendent evaluation process that does require this step, as well as we start with the school committee and the superintendent drawing up some goals together at the beginning of the year. And we agree on those goals, and those are the goals that we're going to be evaluating and measuring Superintendent Adams' performance. Midway through the year, which is where we're at, we just do a check-in, is basically what this is. And again, it's part of the process that we adopted. It's not an actual evaluation, but it's just an opportunity for information to come this way if there's something that needs some redirection, or if we need to be made aware of a goal that is already met or might not be met, whatever that is. And then also, it's also our opportunity to send information in this direction so that we don't get to May or June and there are surprises for Mr. Adams. So it's informal, it's not the evaluation, but it's also important feedback in both directions. So what I ask is that what we normally do is that anybody with input, please send that to me before the next meeting. Give me at least up to 2 or 3 days before the next meeting so that I have time to assemble everybody's thoughts. And then it's public, so at the meeting we'll share that with the public and with Mr. Adams. Does that process sound fair to everybody else? And then to complete the process at the end of the year, we have the full evaluation where we have a rubric, and again, that information is shared with the public. And then the next step after that is usually during our summer retreat session. It's a time for reflection on, you know, did we have the right goals? Did we meet those goals? Do we want to continue on that same trajectory, or do we need to change direction? And that's the cycle. So if anybody in the community has questions, please feel free to contact me. And then members, we've all done this together before, so you know the drill. And just please get things in on time. And you're all fabulous about
And you
that.
just want a couple
sentences. This is not the evaluation, so you don't need to go and review evidence or.
And I will provide you with things that we have done just to help as well.
Yeah, and Mr. Adams will tell us where he's at.
I'm pretty-
And then
yeah,
if you have
pretty honest about
anything to add to that, or any concerns, or if you have input that you think will be valuable to him in terms of, you know, getting to the end of the year and being able to, you know, either continue movement towards the goals or a concern about our progress, now's the time to share that, okay?
Madam Chair, I would request that perhaps you make Ms. Williams, who's not here today, aware of your expectations for feedback and input.
Absolutely.
So
I'm sure she's watching.
she's watching. I'd like her to be here. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
send
just-
out an email that just confirms, you know, the date so everybody can get it on their calendars. And again, all I ask is because especially, you know, in years when there's lots of feedback, it just takes me a little time to put it all together, and I want to give it the time that it deserves. So if I have at least a good day or two beforehand to make sure that it gets done so that it's valuable to the superintendent, I would appreciate that.
Great.
All good?
all good.
Thanks.
All good.
Excellent. All right, superintendent's report.
Just real quick.
You just gave it.
Real quick, I just gave it.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up getting the budget proposal to you, into the community, which tomorrow is that date that I set. And I plan on hosting a Zoom session, which is, again, I'll send a link out to folks. It's just an online opportunity to review the budget with me personally, instead of having, you know, you can come in and talk to me anytime you want as a community member, but in terms of, it's during the breaks. I don't know how many people will sign up, but I want to at least give an opportunity on the 20th to have folks sign in and ask questions. It'll be published, and quite often I think that helps as they prepare maybe to come here to have a conversation about the entire budget during our hearing. So
that means if people are on the beach or something like that, they can still participate?
absolutely, yep. They can go wherever,
It might be very
and
cold, that
in the
beach.
comfort of their own home, which is where I will be with my boys, as my wife will be in Spain. So.
Oh, wow.
So I think that's all I have to report, because Mr. Kendall will hit the other stuff, because we're spending a lot of time together.
So we've heard.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And we don't-
Warrant approvals?
Yes. Got it.
Excuse
Between January 9th, 2019 and February 13th, 2019, I, Kathleen Bates, authorized by my signature, payables in the amount of $619,391.90. This includes general fund expenses of $291,594.42, revolving expenses of $325,030.89, and grant expenses of $2,291.37. I also authorized meals tax expenses in the amount of $202.75 and capital expenses of $272.47. Finally, I authorized payroll in the amount of $2,108,646.07.
Thank you for
You're
all of that
welcome.
authorization. Sound very powerful.
And rich.
Exactly.
I just wield my pen
Appreciate
and
it.
make it so.
I don't believe we have any policy
That's
updates
correct.
this evening.
No, we do not.
Approval of minutes, January 23rd, 2019. Did anybody have anything on those?
Look good to
On the
me.
meeting minute, I think they looked fine to me.
Excellent, as usual.
It's very thorough, Erin.
Thank you. So do we
Make
have a motion?
Yeah, I don't have
to
any.
approve the minutes of January 23rd as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Gifts and donations?
Sure. We have a number this evening. Christopher and Dawn Tomasino, $2,000 to the Make-A-Wish Club. Philip and Sue Curlette, $100 to the Mr. Beaton Memorial Fund. PBIS funds, $800 from a social for the middle school. Ohio Pile Prince, $46.97 to miscellaneous gifts and donations. AEFI grants came out, $23,660 donated from AEFI to a variety of school personnel. Elizabeth De Benedictus, $20 to the class of 2021. Participants of the Give the Kids a World trip, $410.20. Wait had a number of them, $36 to the class of 2019 Senior Week, $12 to the David Mendez Sandwich Making Club, $25.83 to the Student Council, $22 to the class of 2021, and $10 to the class of 2021, for a grand total of $27,143.
Very nice.
Excellent. Thank you. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the gifts and donations as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Excellent. Committee reports of activities. I'm going to start with you, Nicole. Do you have anything you want to share?
Nothing really new. I had an interview with Dartmouth the other day with a woman who lives in Ashland. She actually has kids who go to the Ashland Public Schools.
Nice.
So we talked about that. It was cool. That's really it.
Nice.
Great. Good luck. Mr. Kendall?
I attended a 5th grade principal coffee. That's where Mr. DiGirolamo comes down and answers any questions about making the transition. So that was good. We had a dad's meeting. We went over to the ale house on a night where they were donating proceeds to the girls' basketball program. So that was a win-win. We were able to go over there, have some dinner, and talk some dad stuff, but also support the girls there. Building committee update things. So we received 11 responses to our RFS for project management services. We shortlisted that, and we're going to be interviewing 5 respondents. And yeah, that's about it.
What does that involve, the interviewing?
So,
About 8 hours.
Oh, is it long? Like an
yeah,
hour?
we couldn't narrow it down any further.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of qualified responses. So the process is it's pretty regimented with the MSBA's process. So we take the 11 responses. I believe there was 13 pieces of criteria that we had to assign weight to. And so we took each one of those packages that we received individually. The 7 of us all went through the packages and essentially graded them on those criteria. And then this past Monday, we got together and tabulated that and came up with, a ranking. And based on that, they were, the top 5 were relatively close, and so we decided that we're going to interview all 5 of them.
And so they come in to you?
So they'll come in. They're going to have a 15-minute, provide us with a 15-minute presentation, and then we have 10 questions that we have decided on as a group that we are going to ask.
Standard questions that you'll ask each one?
So again, the MSBA in the RFS, we have to lay out exactly how we go about the selection process. And so part of that is a list of predetermined interview questions that we will again weight. And then that is part of the selection. So when we decide of those 5, which one we are going to try to negotiate and contract services with, we have a little bit more flexibility, but then we have to present our methods and everything in a narrative that is part of the RFS package that then goes back to the MSBA.
Wow. Thank you for all that work.
Yeah, and thank you. Each of those RFS packages vary between 25 and 60 pages. And again, there was 13 different criteria, and some of that, to go through the pack, it's not a trivial amount of work to do that.
Yeah,
so,
thanks to the volunteers, our
so
town residents that have stepped up.
So they did a great job.
Great, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Mrs. Bates. I went to the AshPac meeting last Wednesday night. I went to the Clocker Club pancake breakfast on Super Bowl Sunday. That's always a nice showing, a lot of community support there. And the wrestling season is winding down, and I believe Ashland placed, I think, 4th at the sectionals last Saturday. And I think we have 6 wrestlers moving on to the States, which is Friday. And I think 3 of the wrestlers placed first.
They did.
Number 1. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
That's great.
So I had something a little different this past week, and I think I shared with the committee that I was going to be doing this, but I had an opportunity to meet with the Boy Scout troop on Saturday morning at the request of Sarah Apke, who I guess leads that group. Her son Andrew is in this group, so it's largely 6th and 7th graders, I think, maybe 1 8th grader in there. About 10 altogether, but just talking about what school committees do, how school districts work. It was actually a lot of fun. Time flew by. And I think there are definitely some people in there that have government in their future in some fashion. It's political science or something different, I don't know, but it was a lot of fun.
What, by the questions they asked you?
Yeah,
What were you
there was
thinking?
one who
Some
definitely
interesting-
had very
That's
strong
cute.
opinions about how things should work.
Oh, that's awesome.
There was only one of those?
There's only one of those.
That's great.
Or the other ones were keeping their opinions to themselves. But no, they did. They had a lot of good questions. There were questions
nice.
about that kind of related to start times. And what was interesting is there were, I think, 2 or 3 kids from Ashland, a couple from Halston, a couple from Hopkinton, one from Southborough. So their experience was different. And so they were kind of asking questions about was it better to have districting for elementary schools, because I think in Northborough, Southborough, they're regionalized 9 through 12, but their K through 8 grades are separate, which is is a different animal than how we do things here. The way we do them, I think, is similar to Halston and Hopkinton. So they just were asking sort of whether I had opinions on which was better, what the right answer was, and start times, and all sorts of stuff. So
And they recorded it, so your
that's
clients can hear
awesome.
that, and whatever your opinions were.
not to my knowledge, but perhaps.
You never know.
So that was a lot of fun.
That's excellent. Well, I don't know if have you guys heard upcoming for the community, there's at the library on March 12th, a panel for getting, community members can ask about what's it like to run for office. you know, and what's that process, and once you get on board, what are the responsibilities? So I'm gonna go and talk about the school committee, and there'll be people there from other boards talking about what it's like, so.
Oh, great.
March 12th, if anybody out there wants to
When
know.
are papers due in, like, was that,
I was gonna say, this seems a little late for this cycle. You would think that,
it would have been a while before.
yeah.
Is that past the deadline?
Well, it's close to the deadline. I think it's,
I thought it was the end of February.
I should probably have a
You might want to know that.
paperwork here. Let's see.
We don't have to worry about this year, but somebody else does.
I know, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, I know it's in there
Gotcha.
somewhere. So
Yeah,
it's typically mid-March, mid to late March, so doesn't give them a lot of time.
yeah, I'm not sure,
That's
you
not
know.
gonna, that's not gonna turn anybody to draw papers, I don't think, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
So that's all I've got.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, action items. So we've got a number of items that are scheduled for the summer retreat.
And then the last two.
Fees, holidays, and then the last two are, we have, our next meeting on
Oh,
February
yeah.
27th is a big meeting. It's our budget hearing meeting. It's when we will be getting our report, hopefully on the Mendes academic study update, which that study had been going on for more than a year. What else? We have other stuff
We have
that
a
night
lot.
too. We have
It's gonna be a
Mid-cycle evaluation.
cycle evaluation, which we
big
just
meeting.
talked about this evening.
We have actually, he'll be shocked to find out, but it's the first time I think the advisory board to extended day is going to be asking for an increase in the last 20 years, so.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
EDP.
Yeah, for EDP. Ms. Mercon-Smith will be in then as well.
We guess she's asking for like $1.
I don't know what it is. I just got a call today saying, Jim, can we put it on? Yes, we can. For you, anything.
Yeah, good.
So,
The
Excellent.
Mendez update, though, that's just an update.
well,
We're
no,
not-
it's the, it'll be.
Are we voting on anything?
There'll
We're
be
not,
nothing
right?
to be,
Yeah.
I do
We're
not
just getting
anticipate anything
information.
voted on. I don't
Yeah.
think that was within her,
Right,
with Dr. Cohen's purview. It was sort of, let's present the information
Yeah.
that she was able to find and the data that they were able to find. And if there may be recommendations, but nothing to be voted on.
right. It's just
That
a-
potentially could move forward, making
Yep.
things more equitable. I have not seen
Sure.
anything,
Okay.
and I know she is away. She's in Los Angeles right now, but I learned my lesson well with the preschool piece. When we get that information and we set the agenda and we have that PowerPoint, we will post it online, and I will forward it to families and folks so they have it in their possession before our meeting.
Right,
So-
but it's also very important that it is simply an information
Yeah.
gathering report.
That's
There's
right.
nothing we're doing.
And
We're
There's
not
no
doing
action.
anything.
Right,
So-
on the February 27th
and-
meeting.
and-
We'll
Right.
know
Correct.
after that whether there
If
are
we have to
next
do anything.
steps.
Right.
And quite frankly, speaking on the building committee side, one of the biggest reasons to do this is the undertaking we're going on with the building.
That's right.
Because that's gonna be invaluable, because the programming piece drives the building
Size.
that building needs will have going
Absolutely.
forward. So, so I wanna be clear that, to anybody who's listening, that that's the biggest thing and reason why we needed to do it now is this project, we need to make sure that the needs of the programming we want, that we either have now and or want to continue or expand on, are gonna be accounted for in the project. And
Feasibility
without
study.
the information that they're gathering, that might be harder to sell when we go to the MSBA, because the spaces, all the different things associated with what will be a qualify for reimbursement. We can do anything we want with the building, but, you know, spaces and costs and things like that have to fall in reimbursable categories, and so, and that's all driven by our programming, so it's a very crucial piece from that perspective. So our next meeting, and the intention of that whole thing is not to, hey, we need to blow up stuff, make changes, it's more information gathering to,
Sure.
for future, so.
Just to that point, Paul, and thank you for raising it. If we're gonna do anything with this report, again, I have no idea what it's gonna say. How, as it connects to the building project, when in time would we presumably need to make some sort of decision if there's anything to be made
Yeah.
to allow the building committee to,
So
You're working on
my
that.
guess would be not until mid-2020.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. You don't have to rush,
Because,
but-
right, there's not a rush with it, only in the sense that once we get into the feasibility study, we're not even going to get into the feasibility study until probably May, June of this year, the beginning process. Because we can't go before the board, MSBA board, until April 1.
The OPM panel
Right.
at the MSBA, they have a hearing where they actually formally approve, and then we actually execute the contract after that, is the beginning of April. So
Yeah.
then,
We got a good design.
then we do an RFS for the designer services,
Right.
and the OPM helps us with that. And we go through basically the same thing we went through for the project manager,
Yeah.
for the designer services.
Another 3-4
And then
months.
after that, and that gets approved, and so that process involves actually a selection process that includes the MSBA, and then we get positions on that, we essentially get 2 votes on who we're selecting. Then we can start looking at what we're
Right.
doing for a
So
feasibility.
we're a ways
study.
away.
So
Yeah, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
But there's a
Oh,
little-
we're
there's
a
little
long
bit-
ways away.
There's a little bit to do before
Exactly.
we get into
So
the
there
weeds there.
will be no votes, just on
Information,
any
right.
changes. It's information that was gathered.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's what
great.
she's pulled together for us.
Right, but if ever you wanted to attend a meeting,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so.
anybody out there, there are a lot of interesting
Yeah,
topics being raised at the next meeting,
Yeah.
so, and we do want to hear your input on the budget hearing. That's why we hold the hearing, is to get input from the community, so it's not a hearing if people don't.
Right.
I mean, we'll have the hearing by law, but
Right.
we hope to actually hear from you, so.
Right.
That's the
please
hearing,
consider
right?
attending.
The hearing,
Yes,
hearing.
exactly. So, I think we're done.
All right.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.